Paratmanamekam Jagadbijamadyam Niriham Nirakaram Omkaravedyam Yato Jayate Palyate Yena Vishvam Tamisham Bhaje Liyate Yatra Vishvam Pariyam Tatsat Pariyam Tatsat Pariyam Tatsat. So dear devotees, in the last class we had touched upon some very important points. Today it is the 6th session. We have finished 5 sessions dealing with the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And just to touch upon the main points before we go ahead. This 15th chapter is considered to be the most important chapter among all the 18 chapters of the Gita. Because this is not only the essence of the whole of the Gita, Shankaracharya says that it is the essence of the whole of the Vedas itself. So we have seen right from the beginning how Bhagavan Krishna places before us everything that we are supposed to know as far as our life in this world is concerned, and as far as the supreme reality which we are searching for. So the book starts with a beautiful description of this tree of this world, Samsara Vriksha. This entire world is compared to a tree. And just like a tree has got its roots, this samsara has got its roots. And it is that root which we are referring to as God. As long as we are busy eating fruits sitting on the branches of this tree, not paying attention to the root of this tree, we are trapped. So this shifting of the human attention from the fruits and paying attention to the root of this tree, that is the whole purpose of human life. And it is that root which is called God. It is that which is worshipped in so many forms, with so many names, in this great system called Hindu Dharma. It is that root which is worshipped in so many forms. That is why in Hinduism alone we find that divinity is celebrated in numerous names with numerous forms. That is the beauty of this great system of Hindu Dharma. Anyhow, so the last class especially, the main point of discussion, Bhagavan Krishna has placed before us a beautiful thing. Before that, he had described what is the nature of the supreme reality. Now, the last class, he touched upon a very important point. What is the relationship of we as human beings? How are we related to God? What is the relationship between this individual soul and that supreme reality? That was the main point of discussion. In the main point, I should say, that was the starting point of the last session. And where Krishna says so beautifully, who is this individual soul? Who is this human being? Who is this man? Who is this woman? What is his or her true nature? How is he or she connected with God? And Sri Krishna says, what is the relationship? Mama eva ansha. One beautiful term. Krishna says, the individual soul, the human being, is my own part. And elaborating this idea further, Bhagavan Shankaracharya gives two beautiful examples to make us understand what is the meaning of we human beings being the part of God or part of divinity. So what is the meaning of we being the part of divinity or God? Bhagavan Shankaracharya says that just like if you keep a pot in the open, a pot filled with water, if it is in the open, what will happen? The sun which is in the sky, the sun gets reflected in the pot containing the water. So you can see the reflected sun inside the pot. But does it mean that the sun has left its place and entered into the pot? It's not. Sun is perfectly in its own place, but its reflection is seen in a certain medium. Now, if the reflection begins to inquire into its own true nature, again I repeat, if the reflected sun begins to inquire into its own true nature, who am I? Where will that reflected sun end up? That is the question. If the reflected sun begins to inquire into its own true nature, as to who am I, the reflected sun will discover, it will discover itself to be nothing but the Supreme Sun, the sky. So this is the relationship between the individual soul and the Supreme Reality, the divinity that Krishna is talking about, that the Vedas are talking about. So Vedas have to tell only one thing. The most important teaching is what? Tat Tvamasi. Tat Tvamasi. Tat Tvamasi. You are not this reflected entity. You are that which is getting reflected in a certain medium. You are not this, you are that, you are that, you are that. So the whole inquiry is into what is my true nature? That is the whole meaning of this Hindu Dharma. Hindu Dharma, through all these varied forms of worship of the divine, varied methods of approaching the divine, in and through all those wonderful disciplines and exercises, essentially it is a striving of the reflected sun to realize itself to be nothing but that sun shining in all its glory. When this individual soul begins to inquire into its own true nature, it will end up in discovering. Presently, that truth is covered up. When the inquiry is instituted, a discovering of that reality takes place. And this is the great venture of so-called the Hindu Dharma or Vedanta or the so-called the Vedic religion. So Krishna has told that what is the relationship between the individual soul and the supreme reality called Brahman. That relationship is this, that the individual soul is nothing but my reflection. And there is a famous statement in the Vedanta, a very famous statement which Bhagavan Shankaracharya has made. Shankaracharya says in the statement, what is that? Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya, Jiva Brahmaiva, Apara. Beautiful statement. Brahman is true. And this Jiva in itself is Mithya. Brahman means the supreme reality. Jiva means the individual soul, the human being. So, the sun is true. To put it in the language of the illustration, the sun is true. What about the reflection? Is it true in its own self? It cannot be true. The sun is true. The reflected sun is Mithya. So what is the true nature of the reflected sun? That reflected sun is nothing but the supreme sun. That is the meaning of Jiva Brahmaiva Apara. Brahman is true. The reflected Brahman reflected in a certain medium. That reflected individual is Mithya. When that reflected individual begins to inquire into his or her true nature, he or she will discover what? I am Brahman itself. So that is the meaning of this great utterance. Brahma Satyam and Jiva Mithya. And Jiva is what? Brahmaiva. The reflected sun is nothing but the supreme sun shining in the sky. There is no separate, absolute existence possible for the reflected individual or the reflected sun. What is actually existing is the supreme sun and alone. Even now, our true identity is that and that alone. But this will be understood and this will be discovered only when we begin to lead a certain kind of life. Certain virtues have to be cultivated, without which this great realization is never going to come into our lives. And that is the whole so-called the scheme of spiritual life. The scheme of all the spiritual disciplines is meant to help us reach that great discovery of the supreme truth. Then Krishna says, as long as we don't discover ourselves to be that supreme reality, as long as we are ignorant of what is going to happen, as long as we are unaware of our true nature, as long as we have taken it for granted that we are this, we are this, we are this, we never question about it. We are blissfully continuing our life without instituting this inquiry. And we have taken it for granted that I means this. As long as this awareness continues, that individual soul keeps on transmigrating from one body to the other. And here comes that great, one of the important pillars of Hindu Sanatana Dharma, the idea of reincarnation and rebirth, which is very unique to the Vedic system of thought, which you won't find in the Semitic systems. That is the beauty of the so-called the Indian or the Hindu system of thought, which is the only system perhaps in the world where you find this great scientific fact of individual souls assuming bodies after bodies, birth after birth, it goes on. As long as the individual soul doesn't know its true nature, this phenomenon of birth, being born in different bodies, it keeps on going on. Unending, it will go on. So Krishna had told. So how does this rebirth take place? He says beautifully, just like at the time of leaving the body. Now just imagine the end has come and the individual soul is ready to leave its body. And in Bhagavad Gita itself, Krishna has given two beautiful examples. In one place Krishna says, Vasansi jirnani yatha vihari. Just like when our clothes become old and torn, what do? We give up our old clothes and we take up new clothes. Similarly, when this body is no more fit to do the things it is meant for, what does the individual soul do? It discards the old, worn out, dilapidated body and it assumes a new body. This is the great teaching that Krishna gives in the Gita itself. In another place he says, Dehino asmin yatha dehe kauma yauvanam jara tatha dehantara prapti dhiras tatra namuhyati. Beautiful. Dehino yasmin yatha dehe asmin dehe. In this body, just like this individual soul is born in one body and after birth it grows into a teenager, that it becomes a young adult, that it grows old, it becomes diseased, and finally the end comes. End of that body comes only to be born again in a new body. That's why the wise person never grieves over death. That is the language, so beautiful. There is nothing to grieve over death. It is just a phenomenon, just like you change your old clothes and put on new clothes. The individual soul keeps on taking up new bodies and discards the old. And in this process, when the final moment comes, how does this phenomenon take place? Krishna gives a beautiful example. just like a blowing wind. When the wind blows, the wind carries along with it the fragrance of different flowers along with it. Similarly, at the time of death, this individual soul draws to itself the sense organs of the mind, and thus, leaving the gross body aside, the individual soul enters into a new gross body. These are all very cryptic statements in this chapter. So beautiful. Actually, it's not that simple. The details of this are discussed in another Upanishads. For example, if you study Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, you will find further graphic details of this phenomenon of rebirth. Here Krishna is just touching upon that point, that at the point of death, what does this individual soul do? It draws to itself the mind and the sense organs. That means the subtle body is disconnected from the gross body. The gross body is just like a crust, an external crust. This crust is left behind, and the subtle body, leaving the gross body aside, the gross body becomes inanimate. It just becomes like a log of wood. When the subtle body has gone away from the gross body just lies there. That is what we refer to as a dead body. The subtle body is gone from there. But the subtle body has got a destination based upon its karma, the karma which it has performed in the past lives. It assumes a new body. So this is the great phenomenon of so-called rebirth. And this continues as long as this reflected sun doesn't discover itself as the Supreme Sun. So that is a great important idea which Krishna presents here. Then Krishna says, in the new body, when the individual soul has entered into the new body, in the new body also, how is this individual soul experiencing the world? For example, now we are all in this certain bodies. Actually, we means what? It is Supreme Brahman. It is that Supreme Reality getting reflected in so many pots. We are all like different pots containing water in which that Supreme Consciousness is getting reflected, that's all. And this individual soul, how is it experiencing the world? How is it enjoying the different objects of the world? What is the medium through which this individual soul is experiencing the world? That is the next question. It experiences the world through what? Through the five sense organs and the mind. Shrotram, Chakshu, Sparshanam cha, Rasanam, Granameva cha, Adhishthaya Manashchayam, Vishayan Upasevate. We have seen this. Vishayan Upasevate. Vishaya means objects. Upasevate means it experiences. We are experiencing this gross world through what? Through mind and the five senses. So the mind and the five senses are the instruments through which we, the individual soul, we experience this gross world. That Krishna had stated. Now comes the beautiful point. Now the wise man. Now there is a distinction between the wise man and the foolish man. The wise man is a man whose eye of knowledge is open. Eye of knowledge means jnana chakshu. Means he is a person who has understood the real nature of the individual soul as nothing but the Supreme Reality called Brahman. It is just like the reflected sun which has understood itself to be nothing but the sun up in the sky, absolutely free. The sun up in the sky is not bound to that pot. That is the idea. The sun up in the sky is not bound, constricted in that small water inside the pot. Presently, we all experience a kind of bondage and limitation owing to our unquestioned identification with the small pot-like structure called the body-mind complex. But when we begin to investigate into the true nature of this, our association with this limited entity called the body-mind complex, when we begin to inquire into it, something wonderful is waiting to emerge. the knowledge of the true nature of our own self. We are actually speaking, not limited anywhere. Our true nature is limitless. It is beyond all limitations, beyond death, beyond suffering, beyond misery, beyond disease. We are free. That is the central teaching of the Hindu Sanatana Vedanta. So beautiful. So, what is the meaning of wise man? The wise man is a person who knows this. Knows this not intellectually, not having just read a few books. The wise man is a person who has got a deeper perception, a direct perception of this truth through experience. He is a wise man. For that wise person, even when he is alive in this body, he knows very well. Utkramantam sthitam vati bhunjanam vagunanvitam vimudha nanupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshusha. This wise person is a person whose jnana chakshu, whose eye of knowledge is open, and he sees it very clearly. The play of the divine going on in so many forms. Whether you are living in this body, or whether the time to leave this body has come, and even when you are experiencing the different objects of this world, this wise person very clearly knows that it is the same divinity which is playing in so many forms. That person is no more confused about what is happening in life. This is a wonderful development. And the opposite of this is what? Vimudha. Vimudha nanupashyanti. The foolish person, he cannot see this. He cannot see the divinity shining in so many forms. So, vimudha nanupashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshusha. And Krishna has said that there are certain persons, yatanto yoginaschainam pashyanti atmani avasthitam. Krishna says, there are some yogis who are pure in heart. And because of the purity of the heart, they get this realization, what? I am the Atman. This realization comes to them. But those people whose hearts are not pure, what will happen? They don't get this experience. Yatanto api akrtatmano ainam pashyanti achetasa. Achetasa, a person whose heart or antakarnam is not pure, that person cannot understand this truth. So you will see till now what we have discussed. This whole play is a play of knowledge and ignorance. In knowledge, we understand our true nature and we begin to see the whole thing in a different light. And in ignorance, we are confused. In fact, we have just the opposite understanding opposed to the truth. It is an understanding which is false. And because of this false understanding, the human being suffers. So we had come up to this point. Now, in the next 4 verses, Krishna is going to discuss another very important thing, which is very important for all of us to understand. In the next 4 verses, what is the common point? The common point that is going to be discussed in the next 4 verses is that the all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Reality, number 1. That it is the Supreme Reality which is manifested in so many forms, number 2. And in all our empirical dealings, everything that is happening, it is the Supreme Reality which is the substratum or the adhara or the basis without which no empirical dealing is possible. 3 points. Again, I repeat this part. The next 4 verses, what Krishna is going to tell. The central thread of these 4 verses is what? Number 1, the all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Reality. It is the Supreme Reality which is pervading everything that we are experiencing here. Number 1. In short, if you take the illustration of the sun reflected in the pot, it is the one sun which is pervading in all the forms. That is the idea. Number 2, It is that Supreme Reality which we refer to as God, which is manifested in so many forms. The beautiful idea. When our mind gets established in this vision, the life is irreversibly transformed, radically transformed. It's a totally different vision which emerges only when we institute this search. As long as we don't institute this self-inquiry, you will see this vision will never come. We live with a very narrow and a limited understanding about our own self. And it is this narrow and limited understanding about our own self which is the mother of all the suffering and misery that we have in life. So, the second point is what? It is one God, that one Supreme Reality called Brahman, which is getting reflected or which is manifested in so many different forms. And number three, and that is in all our day-to-day, moment-to-moment, empirical dealings, everything, every dealing, you see, I am talking, you are listening, all our mutual interactions, none of these things are possible without the basis of divinity, without God, in short. That divinity which we are referring to as God, that is the very basis or substratum without whose presence none of these empirical dealings become possible. So these are the 3 points, which is the common thread, which will be seen in the next 4 verses. Let us see. Sri Krishna is giving beautiful examples here to make us understand the all-pervasive nature of that Supreme Reality. What is that? He is saying, Yadadityagatam tejo jagat bhasayate kila yat chandramasi yachakam tat tejo vidhi mamakam. Yat adityagatam teja. Adityagatam teja. The luminosity which we find in Aditya. Aditya is what? Sun. The sun is radiant. This radiance which we see in the sun, it is whose radiance? That vidhi mamakam. Krishna is saying, it is my radiance. The luminosity which the sun has got, the sun derives this luminosity from me. Krishna says, me means what? The Supreme Reality, Brahman. So yet Aditya Gadam Tejo. And this luminosity of the sun is how? Jagat Bhasayate Khidam. It is sun's radiance which actually illumines the entire world. This entire world is illumined by the light of sun. So this light of sun is so luminous. From where does it derive its luminosity? Krishna says it comes from God, the Supreme Reality. So yet Aditya Gadam Tejo Jagat Bhasayate Khidam. This radiance of the sun which illumines this entire world, that radiance comes from me. And then what? Yet Chandramasi, that light which we see in the moon, Chandra means moon. Yet Chandramasi, and then Yet Cha Agnav, Agni, fire. These are just 3 items taken, just to make us understand. These are all just representative items, 3 items have been taken. So you can just apply this to everything. That wherever we see light or radiance, we should understand all this radiance comes from that Supreme Reality called Brahman or God. So yet Aditya Gatam Tejo Jagat Bhasayate Kila Yat Chandramasi Yatcha Agnav Tat Tejo Vidhi Mamakam. All this teja, all this luminosity, this radiance, it all comes from God and God alone, from that Supreme Reality. How true it is. Is the radiance and luminosity of the sun eternal and permanent? How many stars have burnt away? They have dead stars, it's gone. The sun today which we have, it is going to die one day, it is not permanent. Your physics, the sun is going to die one day. It may be millions of years, doesn't matter. So many suns have become dead stars. It's a star, it is going to end someday. So what we find is, it seems to be eternal. No, it's not eternal. That's why Bhagavad Gita starts with a beautiful statement, Ashwatham. Here everything is temporary. You won't find anything here permanent. It's all pratikshanamanyata sabhava. Every moment, everything is changing. Where is the unchanging entity? That is the whole search. Our search is for that unchanging entity. In this creation, in this samsara vriksha, we won't find anything which does not change. And our whole search is for that which does not change. And that discovery is the very purpose of the human life. And that search is not something external. It is something to be done within our own self. The source of that knowledge is inside our own self. So anyhow, so yet aditya gatam tejo, jagat bhasayate, yet chandramasi yacha agnam, tat tejo vriddhi maptam. All these luminous bodies which we have in the creation, they all derive their luminosity from me, the Supreme Reality. That is the idea. Then, now this is regarding the different luminous body in this creation. Then it says, Gama Vishyaja Bhutani Dharayami Ahamojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva Somo Bhutva Rasanmukha. What does it mean? Krishna says, Gam Avishya. Gam Avishya means, Gam means earth, Prithvi. I have entered this earth. Gam Avishya. Bhutani Dharayami. I sustain all the living creatures here. Ojasa. Ojasa means by my own power. Krishna is saying, I, the divinity, the supreme consciousness, Brahman, having entered this earth, I sustain all the living creatures here by my own power. So everywhere you will find, as I said, the all-pervasiveness of that supreme reality. It is that supreme reality from whom all the luminous entities in this creation derive their luminosity. It is that supreme reality which has entered into this earth, Prithvi, and it is sustaining all the living creatures. Gam Avishya cha Bhutani. Bhutani means all the living creatures. Gam Avishya. I have entered into this Gam, means Prithvi, this earth, and I am sustaining all the Bhutas. Bhutas means all the living creatures, not only human beings, but all the species. Then what? Pushnami cha Aushadhi Sarva. I am nourishing, Pushnami, nourishing. Nourishing whom? Aushadhi, the different plants. It is I who nourish the different plants. How? Somo Bhutva Prasatmaka. By having become Soma. Krishna is saying that I, having become Soma, I'll come to that point. What is the meaning of the Soma? Krishna is saying, I, having become Soma, through that I am nourishing all the plants, and through the plants, all the living creatures. That is implied in that. So what is the meaning of the Soma? Soma is what? First of all, Krishna says, Soma is what? Rasatmaka. Rasatmaka means that which is made up of, which is of the nature of sap. Sap means juice, the essential juice. We see everything that we eat, all our food, whatever we eat, the essence of the food which is eaten, you will see in every eaten item, actually the essence is some juice. The juice is there in everything that we are eating. The eaten food may be hard on the surface, but inside everything there is a juice. So Soma is the source of all the juices. Shankaracharya says in his commentary. Soma is that thing which is the essence of all the juices. In fact, all the juices which is nourishing. From where does this body get nourishment? From the juice which is existing in the food. And all these different juices have their source in a more subtle entity called Soma, and that Soma is nothing but me, Krishna says. I am in the form of Soma. So Soma Bhutva, I having become the Soma, which is the source of all the juices, and which is there in all the food that is present. Aham Pushnami, I am nourishing everybody. So see, all this process of nourishment, from essentially, what is the source of all nourishment? The point is that, see, the language may be archaic, doesn't matter. We should know when these things have been expressed. The language may be slightly archaic, but the essential principle is very scientific. What it means to say is that we actually speaking, we are deriving all our nourishment from divinity and divinity alone. God is the source of all nourishment. Without the presence of that supreme reality, no nourishment is possible. As I said, the central thread of these 4 verses is what? The all-pervasiveness of that supreme reality. That it is that supreme reality which is manifested in all these different forms, and that supreme reality is the very basis of everything that is happening at our human plane of existence. So we just keep these 3 points in view, you will understand what Krishna is trying to say in these 4 verses. So in short, in this verse Krishna is saying, what? Gama Vishtita Bhutani Dharayami Aham Ojasa. Having entered the earth, I am sustaining all the living creatures here by my own power. Aham Ojasa. Ojas means power. Ojas is a different kind of power. Power or energy. Energy is of different kinds. We have crude energy and we have very refined energy. The ultimate energy is the divine energy. And it is that divine energy which is referred to as Shakti. It is referred to by different beautiful terms like Adi Shakti, Para Shakti, Paramesha Shakti. Shankaracharya calls it as Paramesha Shakti. So everything is actually speaking nothing but that Para Shakti or Adi Shakti or Paramesha Shakti, which is sustaining this entire creation, which is holding this entire creation, which is at the back of you and me, which is at the back of everything. That is the central idea. So Krishna is saying, Aham Ojasa, by my power, by my Shakti, that divine Shakti, I having entered this Prithvi, this earth, I am sustaining all the living creatures, and then having become the Soma, which is the source of all the juices, I am nourishing all the plants. And in and through that, the living creatures which eat these plants, they indirectly get nourishment. In short, the source of everything is God. That is the central idea. God pervades everything. God is manifested in so many different forms. And it is the God which is the very Adhar, or the very basis, the very substratum of everything that is happening here. Do you think that I am talking here, or anybody can even talk, even utter a single word without that Parashakti, without that Adi Shakti? Can any, even the slightest movement take place here? Nothing, not a single blade of grass can move without the involvement of that Supreme Shakti. It's impossible. That is what is conveyed here by these 4 beautiful verses. So, Gama Vishyata Bhutani, Dharayami Aham Ojasa, Pushnami Chaushati Sarva, Somo Bhutva Rasantaka. And what? The same idea is continuing in the next verse. Krishna says, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva, Praninam Dehamashita, Pranapana Samayukta, Pachami Anna Chaturvidha. So good. Again, the same idea continues. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva. I, having become Vaishvanara. We'll see what is the meaning of Vaishvanara. These are all technical terms. I, having become Vaishvanara, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva, Pranina Dehamashrita. I am inside all the pranis, all the living creatures, in the form of Vaishvanara. It is God which is existing in all of us in the form of Vaishvanara. Now, what is the meaning of this Vaishvanara? Vaishvanara means the digestive fire which we have in our stomach. That fire which digests the food. That digestive fire, Shankaracharya says, Jathara Agni. Jathara Agni. Jathara Agni means that fire which is there in our tummy. You just see. Now everything is universal. Is this Jathara Agni limited to only my tummy? It is burning, it is aflame in all the tummies. It's so beautiful. Not only human beings, in all the living creatures, this fire is eternally burning. You put food into it, you keep on putting food into it, endlessly you keep on putting food into it, it keeps on burning and burning and burning and burning. Eternally it is going on. It is God's power in the form of this Jataragni, in the form of this Vaishvanara, the digestive power which is there in all the living creatures. So Krishna says, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva, Praninam Deham Ashrita, Praninam Deham Ashrita. I have entered into all the pranis in the form of this digestive fire. And what does this digestive fire do? Pranapana Samayuktaha. By associating this digestive fire associated with prana and apana. Prana and apana are the two pranas. Pranas in two different ways it is functioning. Prana and apana, these are the two vital forces which is functioning in this body. You see this, every body, every living body is animated by prana. These are all wonderful ideas. We can keep on talking on the subject of prana separately, independently. It's such a prana itself is universal. All the animation that we see, which we see in this world, in this creation, it is all owing to this one energy called prana. In fact, in the Vedic ideology, the rishis first discovered prana before discovering Brahman. The first great discovery was of the discovery of prana. And it is said that anyone who masters this prana, in and through the mastery of this prana, you can master the entire creation. That is what the yogis do. And that is what is referred to as pranayama. It's a wonderful, highly scientific exercise. One who understands the mystery of this prana, the vital force which is forcing in every living creature. And it has got 5 different ways of its functioning. And based upon 5 different ways of its functioning, it has got 5 different names. Anyway, I'm not going into the details of that now. But here, Krishna is saying, having become this Vaishvanara, this digestive fire which is existing in all of us, associated with prana and apana, aham pachami annam chaturvidham. I digest the food. The food is of 4 kinds. So beautiful. Chaturvidham means 4 kinds of anna. So beautiful. So what are these 4 different kinds of anna? 4 different kinds of anna. Food means, Shankaracharya says in his commentary, food, that which is masticated, that which is directly swallowed, that which we lick and have it, and that which we suck and have it. 4 different ways of ingesting. We may say 4 different ways in which human beings are all the different creatures. If you see, there are 4 different ways of ingesting food. It may be masticating, it may be swallowing, it may be sucking, or it may be licking. So foods are of 4 different kinds. But whatever it is, whatever food goes inside the system, it is God's digestive power, which associated with prana and apana, which digests everything. Pachami annam chaturvidham. So beautiful. For commenting upon this verse, Shankaracharya tells a very beautiful thing. Shankaracharya says, now see, this is the vision of the wise person. If you just look into this statement, what Krishna is making here. Who is the eater of the food? Are we eating food? The food is being eaten or digested by God. And what is the food that is eaten? The food that is eaten is also God. It is God in the form of eaten And it is God who is in the form of the ether. And Shankaracharya says, anyone who knows this, that it is the supreme reality which is in the form of the ether, as well as the supreme reality which is in the form of the ether, that person will never be affected by the impurities present in the food. No impurity can touch that person. What a beautiful statement. When we have food, are we ever aware of this fact? We simply eat. That is why we have the practice of first chanting Brahmanapanam, Brahmanavi, Brahmano, Brahmanavutam. Why? What is the meaning of that? The eater is Brahman, the eaten food is Brahman, everything is Brahman, everything is divine. And in the Taittiriya Upanishad we come across in the Bhrigu, in the last chapter, where that sage attains this great realization and he comes and his utterance is so beautiful, so poetic. You can see the spirit of ecstasy there, where that Rishi is saying, Ahamannam, 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 Ahamannado, 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 Aham Shlokakrit, Aham Shlokakrit, Aham Shlokakrit. What is the meaning of that? The Rishi is saying, Ahamannam, Ahamannam, Ahamannam. I am the food, I am the food, I am the food. Ahamannado, Ahamannado, Ahamannado. I am the eater of the food. I am the eater of the food. I am the eater of the food. Aham Shlokakrit, Aham Shlokakrit, Aham Shlokakrit. Means what? In me, the food and the eater of the food both get unified. Shlokakrit there, then Shloka means that which unifies. See, everything gets unified in God. In that supreme reality, all the polarities come to an end. That is the point. The ether is that supreme reality. The food which is eaten is that supreme reality. So this polarity of ether and the ether, everything comes to an end in this supreme reality, which is Shlokakrit. Shlokakrit means the unified. Brahman, God is the great unifier in which everything gets unified. All the diversity comes and gets unified and merged into the indivisible entity called God. So we have a totally different vision now, what Krishna is presenting. The all-pervasiveness of the supreme reality. It is that supreme reality which is manifested in so many different ways. And it is that supreme reality which is the very basis of everything that is happening in this creation. So, Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva, Pranina Dehamashita, Pranapano Samayukto, Pachati Anna Chaturvita. So, to put it like this. So, that's why when we eat food, we have to eat food with this attitude. The thing which is eaten. And who is actually eating? We have never eaten food. The eater was always someone else. And as long as we think that I am eating food, we are in bondage. There's another way of understanding this situation. So, then comes one more verse we will take and then we can wind up. Here, the next idea. Further, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto Matta smritir jnanapapohanamcha Vedaisha sarvai rahameva vedyo Vedanta krit vedvideva cha. What does it mean? It says, Sarvasya cha aham hridhi sannivishto. Aham sarvasya hridhi sannivishto. It is I, that supreme reality, which has entered into everybody's hridayam. Into everybody's hridayam means the antakarana. You see, just like the sun which has entered into the waters of the pot. So beautiful. Always keep this illustration before your eyes. The sun which is getting reflected in the pot. Similarly, Krishna is saying it is God which has entered into everyone's heart. In your heart, in my heart. Is God far away? Not at all. We distance God and we suffer. The more we understand our inseparable relationship with God, the more beautiful will be the human life. Otherwise, there is no end to human suffering. To make us understand this point, Krishna is repeatedly giving us all these beautiful illustrations. Krishna is saying, Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto. It is I who have entered into everyone's heart or everyone's antahkarana. And then what? Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. It is matta means it is from me. From me what? See all the things that we have, wonderful experiences which we have. So Krishna is taking two kinds of experiences. Just these are all representative. It means everything that we are experiencing. Everything, all the experiences at the root of everything that is happening, it is God. That is the point. So what are the two items which Krishna takes here? Krishna says smriti and jnana. Smriti means memory. From what is this capacity of the human being to remember something which has taken place in the past? It's a wonderful capacity. See, you remember so many things, what happened in the past. What is this capacity? From where does this capacity come? It comes from God. It comes from that divinity. So, Matta Smritir and Jnana, all this perception and all this so-called the knowledge which we gain, even at the physical and empirical plane, the knowledge of the physics, knowledge of chemistry, and all this knowledge is from where does this, what is this knowing principle? Have you ever thought about that? You solve a mathematical problem. From where does this capacity, this knowing principle? It's a principle. It is consciousness. It is divinity. Without the presence of that knowing principle, we cannot know anything. Even the knowledge of the so-called physical sciences, behind that is this principle of divinity. So Krishna says, it is from me that everybody has got memory. It is from me that everybody gains knowledge. And even the disappearance of memory and knowledge. Not only the gaining of knowledge and memory, but we also forget. Sometimes we see that we fail to recollect something from the past. That failure to recollect from this past is also the play of the divine. The absence of the capacity or the failure to know certain things is also the play of the divine. So the play of the divine is in both the ways. When you remember or whether you forget, behind both this phenomenon of remembering and forgetfulness is the presence of the divine. Behind the phenomenon of knowing and not knowing, behind the phenomenon of jnana as well as ajnana, it is the same, the principle of the divine. Now, as I said, these two items are just representative items. Everything that is happening in our life, behind everything that is going on in our life, it is this principle of divinity. So, sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto, matta smritir jnanam apohanam. Then what? Vedaischa sarvai vedaihi. In and through the whole of the Vedas, ahameva vedyo. Vedyo means that thing which has to be known. And Vedai means through the Vedas. Through the Vedas, what is the object that is to be known? Ahameva. The Vedas have got only one thing to tell the entire human race. The knowledge of the true nature of the Supreme Reality. As I said in the first class, Bhagavad Tattva Jnanam. That is the main concern of the Vedas, that is the main concern of the Hindu Dharma. It is the search for the Supreme Reality. So Vedaischa Sarvai Rahameva Vedyo. It is Aham the Vedya. I am the thing to be known through all the Vedas. And Vedanta Krit. I am the maker of Vedanta. I am the originator of Vedanta. Vedanta Krit. Krit means I am the originator of Vedanta. And Vedavid Evacha Aham. And I am the knower of the Vedas. Means, through Vedas, what is to be known? That Supreme Reality. And who is the originator of the Vedas? It is that Supreme Reality. And who is Vedanta Krit? The Vedanta Krit, the originator of Vedanta, it is that Supreme Reality. And Vedavid, who is the knower of the Vedas? It is that Supreme Reality. In short, in the last these four verses, what do we find? As I said, to just sum up today's this discussion, in these 4 verses, the central idea is the all-pervasiveness of the Supreme Reality. It is the Supreme Reality which is manifested in so many different forms and in all our dealings of our day-to-day life. The basis, the very Adhara, the very substratum is God. Without God, there is nothing. Our everyday life, our life, moment to moment life, it is completely pervaded by God. But we are not understanding this point. Now, this is another very beautiful point before I wind up this whole session. According to the Vedas, according to the Hindu Sanatana Dharma, life is all divine. It is all spiritual. There is nothing secular here. This idea, this obnoxious idea of secularism. It is totally, it's a foreign idea to the Indian situation, the Vedic situation. Life cannot be secular. Human life is inseparably connected with divinity. Only we are not understanding it. That is the main teaching of the Vedas. Human life cannot be divested from religion and spirituality. Religion and spirituality is the very soul of this land. You cannot make it secular. There is nothing secular so-called in the human life. Everything is divine. Why? Sarvasya chaham vriddhi sannivishto matta smritir jnanamapohanamcha vedaisya sarvaira hameva vedyo vedanta veda videva chaham yad adityagatam tejo jagat bhasayate khilam yad chandramasi yacchakam tat tejo vidhimamakam Ramavishicha bhutani dharayami ahamojasa pushnami chaushadhi sarva soma bhutva rasatmakaha aham vaishvanaro bhutva pranina dehamashita pranapana samayukta pachami annam chaturvidham. God is pervaded in everything. There is no activity, no dealing, no empirical dealing is possible without the presence of divinity. This is the Vedic vision. Everything is divine. Every man is divine. Every woman is divine. Divinity is the central thread which runs through the human life. Now we can have 2 kinds of vision. Either our vision can be centered on the body, or it can be centered in the divinity which is residing inside the body. And these 2 things have totally 2 opposed kinds of consequences. As long as our vision is limited to the body idea, you will see the life becomes horrible. All the relationships which are forged, keeping this material body in view, it is bound to end up in endless suffering and misery. And the opposite of this is, when our attention is fixed on divinity, what will happen? Looking at the divinity and not the physical body in itself, you will see what wonderful elevation will come to all relationships. Through this we realize that every human being is divine, every human being is worshipable, every human being is adorable, every human being deserves to be worshipped. It is the attitude of worship. It is a worshipful attitude which will come into the human life, because everything is divine. Nothing is secular. Nothing is mundane here. Everything is divine. That is the great vision. So, I'll just, in short, as I said, the main idea that what we have discussed today is the all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Reality. It is that divinity which is pervading everything here. And it is that divinity which is manifested in so many different forms. And it is that divinity which is the very substratum, the very Adhara of everything that is happening in human life. These are the central idea which Krishna conveys in the last 4 verses. You can stop. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti